Introducing Under Armour's Infinity High Sports Bra. Its ergonomic design is molded to support the natural movement of your body. With cord-out padding, the better breathability eliminates extra bulk without sacrificing support. And quick-dry padding is Under Armour's fastest-drying padding yet. When you're lifting heavy, running fast, and pushing yourself further than ever before, you need a bra that will help you go that extra mile and make you feel your best. Shop the Infinity High Sports Bra now at UA.com.
Tired of guessing your glucose levels all the time? How about a better way to manage your diabetes? Introducing the Eversense E3 CGM system, the only 6-month continuous glucose monitoring system. With real-time glucose readings every 5 minutes delivered to your mobile device and exceptional accuracy over 6 months, Eversense E3 gives you readings you can count on.
For important safety information and to learn more about Eversense, visit eversensediabetes.com/safety. Accuracy evaluated in adult populations with 2 calibrations per day or less.
Target has Laundry Day covered because they offer a great selection of concentrated Tide Pods to help with all your laundry needs. Tide Pods clean, freshen, and help rejuvenate your clothes with odor fighters and stain removers. Did you know Tide Pods clean better than the leading liquid bargain detergent? Tide Pods are powerful enough to make your whites white and your brights bright, even in cold water. Just toss in 1 Tide Pod for small loads, 2 for medium, 3 for large. It's that easy. For great value and convenient pickup options, get Tide Pods today at Target.
This podcast is brought to you by Grant Thornton, an audit, tax, and advisory firm you already have something in common with. They listen too. Grant Thornton takes the time to truly understand your challenges, uncovering inspired solutions that help you turn them into opportunities. Because business today needs fresh perspective, not more noise. Start a conversation at gt.com.
All right. Hey, and welcome to another episode of Hempire. I'm Pete Barenberg. I'm here with your co-host and CEO of PureWell, Nick DeFrancesco. Nick, how's it going today?
Good. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing pretty well. We got a special guest today, right, in the house?
Tell me who we got.
We have NHL All-Star. We're talking about ex-player Riley Cote. Riley, how you doing today, sir?
Doing well, thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Excellent. We appreciate you. That's for sure.
I don't know if Riley knows this, but I'm from Philadelphia. So I did play hockey. I played hockey since I was 6. Played ice hockey. Yeah. I that was like really my main sport. I ended up going to school for football eventually, but hockey was, being Italian, playing in the basement, rolling hockey, playing ice hockey. Yeah. I mean, that was our sport. So,
right.
Yeah. So, but I know you played some big time hockey in Canada, of course, in Philadelphia. What was it like adjusting from Canada, coming to Philadelphia, seeing the passionate fans? How did it make you feel?
Well, you know what? When I moved out of Canada and began playing in the U.S., I started off in Memphis, Tennessee, believe it or not. So I had a year there, and then spent some time in Dayton, Ohio, and then in the East Coast Hockey League, and then I found my way into Philly, which was almost like a perfect marriage for me and the way I played the game, and just the city of Philadelphia and the way they're wired. So the transition in Philly was actually pretty smooth. My first year in Philly, it was the 2004-2005 lockout year, and we landed up winning a championship with the Philadelphia Phantoms, which was the Flyers minor league time at the NHL.
Yeah, of course.
Playing. So that was my first season in Philly. An amazing season as a team as well as an individual. So I couldn't ask for a better start to my time in Philly, and it was just the perfect fit.
Well, one of the things that we were, talking about, obviously we're on Hempire, so hemp, cannabis, everything that we talked about. What I thought was interesting is something that you said, that how the NHL tests for cannabis, right? But nothing really happens if you test positive. They don't really care as much. So what have you learned in the fact of what the NHL or how they view it, on how players are using it for relief and things like that? Or were you shocked that they didn't really care about that?
I retired in 2010, so I've been out of the game for 12 years. But going back to when I was still playing, I got tested 3-4 times a year, and I definitely would have tested positive every time. There's no question. Back then, it seems like a long time ago, 12 years. It's not really. But it is in cannabis time, where back then really the the only available products was traditional flower, and you might have found an edible or two. Fast forward to the current day, and the amount of different cannabis-based products and delivery systems and ratios and all, perfectly dosed products. Like it's amazing for an athlete, right? Not to mention just the common man, right? It's just like it's very predictable.
Right.
Some of these products. So that being said, the drug testing is still a part of hockey in the NHL. However, to your point, they turn a blind eye. They've turned a blind eye for however long around cannabis, because I think they know deep down that cannabis isn't an issue. I think it's political why they do test in the first place. You still have that international border where Canada has a full legal medical cannabis program as well as adult use program, and then here in the U.S. it's still a Schedule 1 drug. So I think there's politics. Right. I think it just removes liability by you're not telling the players to use cannabis, if you don't test. But I would like to see it go that way where you're not testing, because you're sending the wrong message. But as we know, it's never really been about public health. When it comes to cannabis program, it's always been about pushing the agenda of pharmaceuticals and whatever else along the way. So, we're coming to a point here now where I would like to think in the next year or two, the federal government is going to roll out some sort of medical program of sort. And, maybe that is the catalyst to the NHL removing the drug test. And, whatever that is, however that looks, it's inevitable that's going to come. But again, it's still sending the wrong message when you talk about a culture of sport that's ingrained in alcohol, right? I mean, hockey specifically, there's a large culture around alcohol in hockey, and I'd like to see that shift to more cannabis, which it is. And going back to your question. And going from back in the day, a lot of alcohol and opioids, to more mindful athletes using cannabis, different varieties of cannabis. You said 50% guys smoking. I would like to think it's higher than that. That's just smoking cannabis, let alone using tinctures, capsules, transdermal patches, creams, and then different ratios. Some guys aren't THC guys, but a lot of guys are. And and the guys that aren't, there's a place for CBD products, obviously. So the level of consciousness around these products has shifted tremendously. We got a lot of work to do.
Just curious. I mean, obviously in Canada and being here in the United States, I'm sure you weren't new to cannabis just when it came to the United States, but who turned you on to it? Or when did you say, look, I don't want to take these opiates. I don't want to do this, or I'm just, my body's getting beat up and this is what I'm going to turn to. Is someone that told you about that? Is this something that you found on your own? And what do you personally used or used when you were playing?
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm thankful. I had a relationship with cannabis since I was 15 years old. I mean, Canada's got a huge cannabis culture. Okay. Like most parts of the world do have pockets of, cannabis culture. So, I had been introduced to it at a young age. However, I was never introduced to it in a mindful manner. It was kind of like figure it out yourself. Yeah. All drugs are Schedule 1 drugs. All drugs are the same. So, you grow up in this drug culture of like, oh, you're trying to discern the difference between cannabis and mushrooms and cannabis and alcohol and cannabis and Coke and all these other drugs that have come along the way, in that drug culture. So just like probably you guys and everyone else growing up, like, there's no manual, my parents certainly weren't endorsing it. The church certainly wasn't. The establishment certainly wasn't. So it's kind of figuring this thing out on your own, so I had used cannabis throughout my junior hockey career, my whole pro hockey career, but I also used other drugs and alcohol heavily and misused all that. So I never really had the full understanding of, cannabis and how it's really supposed to make you feel. It did help me with anxiety, it did help me with pain management, and those were things that obviously aware of enough to continue using for them. But, I never connected the dots at the time around, holy shit, like this is like a really medicinal plant, and this is very therapeutic, and not just medically, but like spiritually, right? There's like this emotional and spiritual component that I later identified, but it wasn't until I retired, or that last year leading up to retirement in 2010, 28 years old, another year on my contract, I was just banged up physically. I had abused alcohol, I had abused opioids and sleeping pills, along with still using cannabis. I think the cannabis really helped save my life, or save my brain, in the sense that like I was able to actually have the ability to figure that out. Because a lot of guys get swallowed up in that darkness and never come out of it. So 2010, I had 2 surgeries at the end of the year, one on my finger and then one on my nose. I probably could use another one. But I made the decision to not use cannabis, or to not use the prescription drugs that was prescribed, and just use cannabis, and prove to myself that I could use just cannabis to manage the pain and the anxiety of this is post-surgery now we're talking, which led me down this path of like, holy, like, you know, like there's this world of, you know, holism, herbalism, you know, which words you want to call it, that's not the traditional model. Protocols of pain management and sleep management and essentially recovery and regeneration. So I had read a couple books. Hemp for Health really kind of like jump started me on this world of, you know, cannabis as an industrial resource, not just medicine, you know, the food, the fiber, you know, just industrial applications of the plant. And then kind of broke down the different cannabinoids and their anti-inflammatory properties and just healing therapeutic properties. So I kind of had this aha moment, went from years of experience, not really understanding the science, to all of a sudden making sense of my experiences with the science, and, you know, and a breakdown of this plant, and kind of making sense of it all and saying, wow, shit, like we've been fundamentally misled here, and I feel like I need to speak for the trees, and, you know, and start kind of pounding the pavement and banging the drum a little bit, and talking about cannabis in its, you know, in its entirety, not just like the medicinal components, which I'm a huge advocate for, obviously, but like, you know, cannabis as an industrial resource as well.
It's pretty wild in what it can do, and the fact that they hold it back from everybody as information. And like you said, you got to kind of find out on your own. You don't really have a manual. I mean, I had a manual, but, you know, he was selling me on the corner, and that was pretty much the direction he gave you in, you know, it really needs to be, you know, constantly hammered into these people on the benefits of the entire plant, man. And not, you know, like you said, keeping people going towards the direction of what, you know, this guy said, just pop this pill or take this, you know, drink, and that'll fix you. You kind of need a little bit of guide. So with people like you, people like us, and trying to, you know, educate, but really explain that, look, there's a lot more to this plant than, you know, sitting on a couch.
I don't know if you're talking to anybody now in the league. How do you feel about something like more education for the players? Like you said, I didn't really know. I'm kind of self-taught. We're all saying the same thing. I mean, do you think they would be open? I know they're turning a blind eye to cannabis, let's say, you know, of testing positive. But how about actually doing some education? Do you think they'd be open to something like that? Education on CBD, topical, something, you know, again, not going all the way to marijuana, but it's something maybe
dipping their toe in.
Right.
You know what? It's interesting. It's a little bit of smoke and mirrors with the NHL, and even like Health Canada around, you know, its position around cannabis. It's almost like you have this legal program, but they don't really want to promote it in a real mindful and responsible manner, which trickles down into, you know, the NHL's position on it, and most pro sports. So even if they believed in it, there's this like political, you know, barrier that's it's preventing them from like doing the right thing, right? I mean, I think, yes, I would love to see that, and we've tried to do that through the NHL Alumni Association as well as the Players Association. Again, there's a lot of friction because it's like, you know, like you said, like to your point, is like we can start at CBD, right? If we don't even want to talk about anything with THC, just to, like, as a starting point, it just interferes with whatever political agenda there is. So, you know, whether it's sponsorship through pharma,
it's going to take money from their pockets,
through alcohol. I'm not exactly sure where it stops, because we've even tried to do this with the league I played in junior, the Canadian Hockey League, is like, okay, well, once Canada rolled out its legal cannabis program, like adult use, like guys were already using cannabis, and all of a sudden now it's legal. You know what I mean? You might want to help your players, maybe just try and like guide them in a more responsible and more mindful manner, right? I mean, to me, the education that I do in this space is that everyone can figure out how to smoke weed, right? I mean, that's easy.
Right.
But, I think where it needs to go is like, precise dosing for, a certain goals and objectives, right? I mean, there's this element of healing, obviously, with cannabis, right? I think that's what guys ultimately lean on it for: regeneration, recovery, right? It helps them sleep, helps them with anxiety. But again, like no manual, no guidance. It's just like, okay, well, like everyone just assumes that all cannabis use is the same, right? Like 100 milligram edible is the same as a 5 milligram edible, or packing a bowl, a 1 gram bowl is the same as a one hitter. And I think this is like where like the medicine's in the dose type of education. And this is where it needs to go, with the youth, adults, and everyone in between, because they're going to get their hands on it one way or another. But if they had some sort of guidance, they could use this in a more responsible or more predictable manner. So there's the way I see it is like two different lanes. One is like, absolute healing, recovery, and regeneration, which is still, in the world of performance, right? Because if you heal quicker, you recover quicker, you regenerate quicker, right, you're able to perform better the next day, whether you're an athlete or not, right? That's just like you wake up feeling fresher, you're more focused, and you're less distracted, right? You're less pain, less anxiety, all that good stuff. But I think there's like this world, outside of that, like really in that real, that path of performance, where you got martial artists microdosing THC, you have hockey players microdosing THC for that matter too, right? You kind of find that flow state. The same conversation around like psilocybin microdosing is like, it's not enough to induce classic, say, psychedelic effects or classic, cannabis, impairing, if you will. But it calms the nervous system enough to help you find that present moment where flow state lies, right? And then that element helps performance in the moment and in the future, right? It's just the way it is. But I think there's two different lanes here, but it's all about education and how you dose appropriately, right? And I think most people overconsume cannabis, whether they know it or not, or they think they are or not, and it always goes back to intention. Like, what are you trying to accomplish here? And then how are you going about it? And, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but to answer your question, that's where it needs to go, is like, it's league down type of education. It's team down education, strength and conditioning, team down education. This needs to be brought in internally, not just like, okay, well, these products are available, let the players go on their own and figure this out. Like, this is where, yes, it's certainly better than the old school model of like, traditional pharmaceuticals being prescribed and then, dealing with that whole dark cloud, where now it's like, you open up this can of worms, Pandora's box of all these products, and then like, oh, go figure it out yourself. I guess the beauty of it is that like, you're going to wake up the next morning, whether you eat 200 milligrams of THC or 5, like, the beauty of it is you're going to wake up. You might have a little bit of a weed hangover with 200 milligrams, but hopefully you'll learn from that and you titrate back, but like we can skip a lot of this, because I went through this for years and years and years, misusing cannabis, unhealthy relationship with it, to all of a sudden like reeling it all in and understanding that what I had done is almost like some sort of like lab experiment, where it's like, holy shit, like, we could use these products way more mindfully, way more respectfully, and we could teach people how to use these. I have these conversations with 75-year-old women at my yoga studio.
Have you heard? Amazon is now hiring for their new site opening soon in New Albany. Be one of the first to take advantage of launching a new career at one of the best workplaces in the world. Being a part of Amazon includes great benefits and competitive pay, plus many opportunities for advancement. So get a new job today and kickstart a new career tomorrow. Learn more about the perks of working at a new Amazon site. Go to amazon.com/start now. Amazon is proud to be an equal opportunity employer.
Too, like, where it's like, they just think of, using cannabis as a belly up on your couch, like Cheech and Chong. It's like, okay, well, that can serve its purpose if you decide to go down that path, but it doesn't need to be like that. My opinion is like using cannabis and being productive, and also mitigating pain and anxiety and stress along the way is the goal. You don't want to just like be belly up and I'm mitigating all the pain, stress, and anxiety because I can't do anything because I can't be productive because I've overconsumed cannabis now. So that's whether you're working 9 to 5 or an athlete, there's this world of performance, and it's precision dosing, in my opinion. It comes with education.
Yeah. We're just hearing the same narrative. I mean, and it's just, it gets me more and more mad every way. Education, 100%, Riley. And that's what we do. And that's what Pure Well's about. And, custom formulations and using the cannabis the right way, along with other molecules to put on a specific disease state. But more importantly, what you're saying is kind of what every athlete's saying. They're turning a blind eye to it. They know that it's here to help. They know that they're supposed to be doing something, but it's all smoke and mirrors.
No direction.
All the athletes are saying, please, like, we're using this because it's helping us. Please educate us. Get us off opiates. Get us off of this. Get us off of that. I'm asking for something that'll help my body down the line, not just for now, but for my future, right? Because you're not always going to be in the league, and you actually have a life after the league, which no one ever thinks about, because when the lights are on, they're like, how's he going to perform today? Let's just shoot him up with something and get out there, right? So, I mean, it's just so important. And I know, I was saying when you were working on, because I was looking at some of your things that you do with the Hemp Heals Foundation, and you basically promote cannabis as a viable renewable source so people can live a better quality life. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing with that and trying to educate, because, obviously we're doing this show, we're trying to get the word out there, but we feel it's always fallen on deaf ears. You have a little bit more of a platform. So what are you doing with your time, and tell me a little bit more about this Hemp Heals Foundation?
Sure. Well, since COVID hit, Hemp Heals has kind of been idle, but when I retired in 2010, I started a nonprofit called Hemp Heals Foundation, and it was really a music festival in Philly. I had a relationship with the general manager of Live Nation, so we put on these music festivals called the Hemp Heals Music Festival, and it was really around showing different faces of cannabis, really all the industrial applications, all the stuff we talked about earlier, the textiles and and the soaps and the food and all this good stuff, paper. And just kind of showing the public a different perspective of what they think cannabis is. That went on. We had all the white boy reggae bands, Stephen Marley, Sublime with Rome, Cypress Hill. Revolution, Slightly Stupid, all those kind of bands. So it was really that reggae feel, 5,000-6,000 people. So smaller type of festivals, smaller show, nonetheless. In Philly.
Sounds fun though.
It's definitely fun, and it served its purpose. Again, it's like you said, falling on deaf ears. I think it's like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's like all you can really do is plant seeds, right? I mean, you're not going to preach and change people's mind overnight. Like if they're not ready for it, again, it just goes over their head. But we just stayed persistent and consistent with the message. And then COVID hit, but even like leading up to COVID, my efforts kind of transitioned into which the nonprofit Athletes for Care was really more using my sports platform to, try and legitimize some of these things. I was realizing it's like such a broad scope talking about hemp and all these different things. It's like maybe reel it in and be a little more focused on what the narrative is. And I think that you started using my time a little bit more appropriately, a little more specific in the sense of using, again, the sports platform and trying to destigmatize cannabis and again, help guys transition out of the game. That I was noticing there's a huge problem with guys, again, having a relationship with alcohol and pharmaceutical drugs and retiring, and then trying to use these to navigate their transition, which is extremely difficult to begin with, right? I mean, you're talking about an identity crisis now, because now there's a spiritual component to transition, because your whole identity, your whole ego has been invested in the sport you've played. So cannabis was, a good conduit to helping guys heal. So that's kind of how the Athletes for Care kind of came around. It was originally all my efforts were in Hemp Heals. Just really didn't know what I was doing. Just was standing for something a lot larger than myself. And then, I know then COVID hit, and obviously
right. At least you're doing something. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. As I started speaking publicly around cannabis as a hockey player, naturally running into football players and UFC fighters, and guys with similar stories. It was pain management, anxiety management, stress management, concussion-related issues. And that was really the groundwork of Athletes for Care. It was like 5 athletes coming together and saying, okay, well, let's actually make this a thing and formalize it. To answer your other question, it's like, yeah, 100%. Like once you start putting yourself out there, some bit of a thought leader, or maybe just enough balls to actually stand up and be public about it, then all of a sudden it could be maybe that could be like the catalyst to just making a guy be like, holy shit, I'm kind of thinking this along these lines, but this guy's actually doing it, or this guy's actually saying it, and he's actually got a collective group of people that are actually talking about it. So this must be a thing. This is not just like me thinking that this is medicine or whatever, because there's a lot of closet cannabis users where they're just like they're just lacking the confidence to even like not even just like publicly come out and talk about it, but even at work, it's just like they keep it tight to their chest and I understand why, because it's been a Schedule 1 drug for 90 years. And it's been demonized, and they're worried about the social impact or the stigma that would come along with it. So yes, I get hit up all the time.
I think that more athletes that do this step up and say, look, I mean, we know there's a stigma, but this is helping so many of my friends, my coworkers, myself. You need to look into this, but you need to know what you're taking. All right. I mean, you can't be just popping edibles like you're saying.
Eventually, I think that stigma is going to end up changing. And it's going to show that these people really don't care, because you've got more and more athletes coming out saying, hey, we need help, either physically or mentally. And that silent majority is going to be huge, I think. And that's going to start flipping the thing, because eventually, they're going to, I think there might be a real pushback and say, we're tired of it, man. We're tired of getting shot up and being thrown back out there, tired of not having any kind of care or concern about my, mental state for what's going to come either today, tomorrow, or after, the lights are off. So,
and you're talking about the same thing, the almighty dollar, right? They're trying to still push pharmaceuticals. They're trying to push all these other agendas on these athletes, as well as the public. Let's be real. But come on, I mean, like you said, start small, know what you are, because what you might work for you, Riley, is not going to work for the average person. And not because you're an athlete and they're, a normal person. It could be big, small, age, gender. It doesn't matter. It has to do with your endocannabinoid system. It depends how it works in your body and your tolerance.
And the results you're really trying to achieve.
And the results you're trying to achieve. I mean, you said something specifically about microdosing. I mean, that's normally heard in psilocybin and mushrooms and things like that, but it's absolutely something in cannabis as well. The doctors know, and they're not doing anything about it. And these guys are having to take it upon themselves to go out, try to forward the narrative out there, and it's falling on deaf ears, but not. Because we are making headway, right? We can't just say all negatives, because the truth is that where we were 5 years ago, or, when you retired to where we are now, come on, we're completely different. We really are. I mean,
it's not enough.
It's not enough.
But it's making headway, but just not enough.
Right. And I do know that it's making more of a push to marijuana, whereas there's a lot of benefits to the hemp side. There's a lot of medicinal benefits that you don't even have to get high. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you just want to have, pain relief. And
like Riley said, everybody needs to have a manual. And now with Riley out there, he's everybody's Manuel. So,
right, right. Exactly.
You getting out there regularly, just, throw one down just to, make a point. I mean, I love playing hockey myself. I just, amateur and, street hockey and stuff like that. But I love just getting out there and get that feeling. So did you still, have a little bit of an itch to, get out there once in a while and just kind of throw down?
Yeah, I mean, you throw the skates on, you still go out a little bit. I mean,
not to hurt someone.
Yeah, not to fight, just to
kind of get out there again
and go out and play.
Yeah, I do. I love hockey and will always love hockey. I play, pick up in the adult league whenever I can. Definitely not into fighting anymore. I'm over that. Of course so I go out and I try and be a hockey player, and almost kind of reliving my childhood of playing back on the pond when the game was fun. It was, creative, whether I understood that element or not at the time, but, hockey is a creative sport, read and react. So you get out there and you actually get to play hockey. You get to have some fun. You get to find flow state. Again, microdosing cannabis, microdosing psilocybin. It's a different experience, right?
Right. See that puck a lot better.
You see that puck a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. Things slow down a little bit. You're able to kind of visualize a little bit more. And I have a lot of fun with it. But as far as like the fighting and throwing down, it served its purpose for me. For me to live out my childhood dream and play in the NHL, because that was my dream growing up in Canada, was to play in the NHL. Never thought I'd have to get my hands dirty and fight, 30, 35 times a year to get there. But, it's just the nature of the beast and how things work sometimes. But, I was destined to find my way, and just did it the old fashioned way. And then that served its purpose, right? Between the pain, the anxiety, substance abuse, and the TBI stuff, pushed me along this path of plant medicine and mindfulness. So I'm grateful for all of it and how it's all laid out. However, I would love to help people avoid some unnecessary suffering along the way, and avoid some unnecessary addiction and substance abuse. Awesome. And that's, I feel like that's my, my role now, is to try and be a conduit for change, drug diversion, harm reduction, and just help people, I guess, navigate sport, life a little more skillfully with the information that's available now, right? There's a lot more information available around all this stuff. We live in an age of information, right? It's probably almost confusing for the amount of information that's out there, and polar opposite viewpoints on most stuff. But there's enough information out there now where we can help change the course of humanity, if you will, right? Through education, all the stuff you're talking about, right? It's mindful, it's deliberate, it's precise, it's all these things back, versus back in the day, it was just kind of like use cannabis and just kind of figure out the experience, right? And I think there's so much, precision and predictable dosing now that we could create that experience, or help people create that experience so they don't have to go through the hardships of trial and error and 10 years of cannabis use before they figure out that sweet spot. Maybe we can reel that back into like a month or two. You know what I mean? So you'd save a lot of people's lives, honestly.
For sure.
I mean, that's the case. Saving a lot of people's lives. I mean, he said it right out of his mouth, because that's the truth. And it's just amazing that we have this platform to be able to speak to people and let them know the importance. But you're hearing it from somebody that has first-hand experience of something we'll never be able to do. Listen, I love to be an NHL professional hockey player. I mean, come on. How you got there, fighting or not, the point is, of course, it got your narrative. But I was going to say, just playing, I mean, seeing the game differently, even though now you're retired, do you think that if there wasn't so much pressure, that the players would see it differently?
You play in a team sport, in a team dynamic, and you move up the ranks. Like, there's more structure that's built through the coaching staff, right? It's like you have to have some sort of system, like 5-man system, like where you guys know somewhat what's going to happen, or some sort of predictable system. And that being said, that's more on the defensive side of things, pressuring the puck and trying to get the puck back. And then there's times and places where you do tap into that element of creativity, generally in the offensive zone. I did coach the Flyers minor league team for 7 years, so I had that experience in coaching too, not just playing. Where now they're the green light to be creative, ultra creative, like try and make plays, try and use your creative faculties to attack the net and score goals. But then there's a time and a place to not do that. In the defensive zone, for example, right? It's like you get the puck in a pressured situation, that now is not the time to try and dangle a guy and be creative. It's like you get the puck out, live the fight another day, and get on the forecheck, and we'll breathe and get. I mean, so that's like part of the structure of coaching, where it's like we have to have some sort of boundaries of when and when not to, tap into those creative faculties. It's long gone are the days, once you become a pro, of the pond hockey game, where it's like there's no coach breathing down your throat, there's no pressure, you're not going to lose your paycheck if you fuck up, it's not, all that stuff doesn't matter. So it's just like for the love of the game, the love of creative sport, obviously changes when you get into the business of something, because there's money and there's pressure, and there's jobs at risk and all this other stuff. So you have to kind of create a structured container for that creativity and boundaries, right? Because if player A is turning the puck over because he's trying to be ultra creative, or maybe it's selfish at that time. Well, we got to sit him down, and we can't have that happen because it's taxing our goaltending and our defense. So there's a fine line of being.
Got to have some balance in that.
You got to have some balance there for sure. But it is a creative sport. I mean, that's.
But if it was an exhibition, we're all for the psilocybin puck game. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mandatory microdoses before games for sure.
Yeah, I like it, man. I like it, Riley. I really appreciate the time, man. Too. It's been fun. I think you're doing a great thing out there, besides being an enforcer that you were on the ice. And now you're kind of enforcing out there in life, man, with the hemp heals or, just really with the advocates for athletes and everything like that. So, it's pretty amazing. And, we really want to see you shine just like you did with the spotlight out in the ice, man. So it's pretty awesome. Thanks.
We really do appreciate it. Obviously, as always,
excellent, man. Yeah, any other time you want to catch us, we are on Cannabis Radio. We are Hempire. You can catch us on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio. Don't forget to give us a like, subscribe, follow us, because that's how you're going to get this narrative out. That's how more people are going to hear not what we just have to say, but to the likes of people like Riley. We do appreciate your time here at Cannabis Radio, and this is Hempire.
Thank you for listening.
Get educated, everybody.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.